Well, it's the end of February, so it is time to make a video about my goals for 2025. Hello and welcome. My name is CF Claire. I am a paranormal and fantasy romance author, as well as middle grade fantasy author, aspiring, not published yet. Let's talk about that a little bit. What are my plans for 2025? So I've never been a New Year's resolution kind of person. I've never made like a yearly goal beyond like, this is the year where I finally finish a first draft for about the last 6 years. But I have always struggled with like a lot of anxiety about writing because I have so many stories I want to tell, and I just haven't been able to figure out how to get through to a first draft all the way, especially because the last 6 years have been really intensive with having kids. My oldest is 6 now and my youngest is 4.5, and there's just like so much of yourself that just goes to kids when you're a stay-home mom with them, which I am. So my daughter is now in kindergarten, but I am still home with my son, and I actually have over 39 ideas for stories that I'm like very excited to tell, and I have sketches of in my mind to like varying degrees. So it's time to figure out how to get all of those stories out of my head so that I can have space to actually feel like, oh, it's exciting to have more ideas instead of, oh my God, wouldn't it be so cool if we did also this story? I don't even want to think about it because I already have like all of these other things. Like, it's stressful to get more ideas. Like, oh, yikes. Let's get these stories out so we can like keep going. 2024 was a huge learning year for me about what I need for myself to get through that first draft stage. There were a lot of preconceptions that I had about myself as a writer. I thought for a long time like, oh, I must be a discovery writer because I don't know how to outline and it doesn't seem like it's helpful to outline. No, I'm not a discovery writer. That process has just been awful. I'm a heavy outliner. The difference is that now I know what I need to outline, and I have done enough reading to give myself the tools to make outlines that actually help me to achieve the story that I'm trying to tell. And that's a huge game changer. So 2024 was by far the best writing year of my life. And in these first 2 months of 2025 is by far even better than 2024, the entirety of it was. That's mainly because I'm able to utilize everything that I learned last year without having to go through the process of learning it in this year. So I already know that stuff. So that's huge. But I also came across Sarah Cannon's Kanban board method last fall. The specific goal setting involved in that, coupled with utilizing 25-minute sprints of focused time, works really well for me, apparently. And it's a lot easier to fit into my lifestyle with a 4.5-year-old at the house. I want to do a mix of self-publishing and traditionally publishing, depending on the book, depending on the genre. So with me having so many ideas already, the big thing that I need is to find out what I need in order to write those stories without a lot of pain involved and a lot of like wasted time. So the main problem I've had in the past is not having a strong understanding of what I actually need. I tend to spend a lot longer in the outlining stage than I think pretty much everyone, it seems like, that I see on AuthorTube. I'm always talking about John Truby and The Anatomy of Story, and he's another person who talks a lot about the benefits that come from outlining so much at the beginning. And that just like super resonates with me. I know it's not for everyone, and that's fine. With everything I learned last year, I was able to write Project Chance in 2.5 months, the first draft of it. I've spent multiple years on a project and gotten like a quarter of the way through because of all sorts of roadblocks and like going back and self-editing and like all kinds of stuff. So to be able to have a finished draft in 2.5 months is very motivating. So Project Chance is the first book in an interconnected shifter romance that I'm writing. And the first books that I'm planning to publish are the entirety of that series, which is 5 books planned at the moment. The men in the series are a friend group, and so each book in the series is each member of the male friend group finding their person. So I'm hoping to do rapid release of that series over the course of 2026 and early 2027, every 3 or 4 months. That's the goal. That's what I'm working towards in this year. I have actually already written the first draft of the second book in that series. I wrote that before the first book for a lot of reasons that I don't need to get into right here. So later on this year, I'm planning to do an analysis of that first draft. I haven't looked at it in about 4 months, something like that, and make a plan for draft 2 and write draft 2. I also want to outline the third book in that series, and I already know like all the characters in this friend group, and I already have a pretty good understanding of what their book is going to be about and who the main characters are in the book. So that's extremely helpful for like the timeline that I'm trying to do this year. So outlining for me has gotten more and more detailed. So even though I only want to outline the third book in that series this year, that would mean going from the basics of who those people are all the way down to like the scenes within the book for each chapter. So there's like a lot of work that goes into the outlining for that. But those are the 3 books in the series I'm planning to do this year. However, I am also writing middle grade fantasy. Project Conjurer. It's a trilogy. It's something that I would hope to have traditionally published, if that's possible. I don't know. That would be my first hope. And it's important to me to write that this year, even though I don't imagine it would like make a lot of money or be as successful as the romance novel stuff. But I really want to be able to share with my kids and my family what I'm writing, and I'm not going to share romance novels with them. But it's an extremely complicated series. It's very dense in terms of everything I'm trying to do with it, because I have very lofty ambitions. The actual tone and pacing is like fun, lighthearted for the most part, fast-paced. It's a detective mystery kind of story where the protagonist is a 10-year-old detective, and it's very fun. However, there's a lot of stuff going on beneath the surface of that, so it's complex to plan. And it's not meant to be more than 60,000 words for each book, hopefully more like 40,000 if I can manage it. I made a pitch for it on my AuthorTube newbie video, so I'm just gonna like read a little snippet of that. It's similar to the high fantasy and politics of The Golden Compass meets the adventure and kid friend group kinds of stuff going on in Percy Jackson, using a high magic, high fantasy dystopian world to showcase the innocence of children, not as something that makes them weak and needing to be protected, but that deals with that while also emphasizing the strength of innocence and the strength of children, how catalyzing, inspiring, motivating that innocence can be on older generations. So it's meant to appeal to readers as young as my daughter, who is 6, and as old as my parents, who are in their 60s. So that's my B project. And I'm outlining it right now, and I'm fairly well through a lot of the outlining for it, for how much I want to outline of the trilogy as a whole. There are some big picture stuff that I want to have the pieces of connected before writing any of it. And then also fairly well outlined for book 1 down to the scene level. So there's a long way to go still, but there is a lot done. And I want to finish all of that outlining this year, as well as write all 3 first drafts of those books. And I know that's not very common that you would do that, but that's what feels right for this project. It's essentially one long story in 3 books. Then next year I would go in and I would do an analysis of it and do my revisions and figure out what the next step I want to pursue is with it. So those are my goals for 2025 as a whole. For the first quarter of 2025, I have 3 main goals that have to do with different parts of the writing process that all support the overall goal of being able to write, ideally, eventually, when I get to like the top of my game, 4 romance books every year, as well as at least 1 fantasy book every year. Dream big, right? That's what we're trying to do. So let's look at each of the goals. The first goal was to streamline the process of writing a first draft down to an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes, or the best possible 1 hour. And let's talk about what I mean when I say first draft, because I know that could mean a lot of things. I mean a rough first draft. I mean not concerned with what's the word count. That to me is like madness. I don't do well with writing to word count. That's never worked for me at all. Instead, I write to scene, what needs to be in the scene. If it's in there, great. Then that's what I'm trying to do. So most of the word counts for those chapters ended up being between like 1,000 to 2,000 words. And those are rough, usually missing like a lot of description stuff. I mean, writing fast because I already have the plan of what I'm trying to do. So just trying to take what I know I'm trying to do in the scenes and put that on the page as quickly as possible without sacrificing any of the things that are supposed to be in the scene. But not stopping and being like, how would I describe this? Or what did that look like? I don't like first drafts, so if I try to do that stuff, that's when I don't ever finish anything. And that's when I procrastinate the writing, because I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have to figure out how to describe stuff. That's a second or third draft thing for me. The second goal for the quarter was about outlining, and it had to do with Project Conjurer. That goal was to streamline the outlining process down to 125 task blocks, 100 task blocks, or the best would be 90 task blocks. From the idea of the story all the way down to the scene level outline of the story. And when I'm talking about task blocks, I'm talking about 25-minute task blocks. Those numbers are based on basically nothing, because I have never calculated what I'm doing in task blocks before. So if I fail that, that's fine. It's just illuminating. I don't really know what to expect as far as how long it should take to do outlining stuff, because I outline to such a degree, and I'm also outlining not just for a book for Project Conjurer, but like for a trilogy as well as a book. So it's kind of like, who's to say? I have been keeping track of how many time blocks I spend on it though, so once we're all the way done with the outlining, I'll share what that number is, and it will be interesting to see. I have no idea what to expect, honestly. And then the third goal had to do with revising from a first draft into a second draft. That is streamlining the revising process and the writing of the second draft down to 150, 120, or the best, 100 task blocks. So that would include how long it takes to read the first draft, as well as make my chapter and quarter analyses of the first draft, which I share in a different video, what I mean when I say that, as well as coming up with a plan for what I'm revising, as well as in the scene outline level, if any of those need to be fixed, doing that, and then the actual writing of the second draft. So that's all incorporated in the second draft. For me, second drafts are extremely developmental. I'm not really concerned about prose or dialogue or anything like that, not description. It is just developmentally, does the story work? What is not working with the story? And fixing that. And then in the third draft, I would go in and make it more pretty and add descriptions, knowing that I had fixed the bones of the story in that second draft. So those were my goals for this quarter. Let's take a look at the Kanban board. It's changed a couple of times because of the way this quarter has gone. Like, I initially thought I would just do the first draft of Project Chance and then I would be revising Project Let Go, and that's not going to work. It just makes more sense to revise Project Chance instead of Project Let Go. So let's take a look. The blue is the first draft of Project Chance. So I wrote, I think it was about 3/4 of the book in 2025 because I had written a quarter of it in December of 2024. So those are the chapters that I wrote. So that's all the way done with that first goal. The middle is the outlining of Project Conjurer. I've done a lot of it. There's a lot still left to do. The funny thing about outlining for me is I'm finding that it's very difficult to do just one thing at a time because they all sort of feed into each other organically. So I'm kind of doing all of these things at the moment. So it's a little bit funny. Then over here we've got the revising things to do for Project Chance. So I have already read it and done my 4-quarter analysis stuff. There's some reworking of structural things that I already did, like the premise and stakes and the log line that just happened through what I thought was still the first draft of writing, and then I realized, no, this is like revising. So a little bit funny. And then at the top, there's a bunch of other stuff that I'm going to fix that I already know that need to be worked out before actually planning on the scene level what's changing. And then I'm hoping to do all of that stuff and also write the first quarter of draft 2 this quarter in March. So we'll see. That may be a little extra. But those are my goals. That's my Kanban board. By the way, if anyone's curious, these are just like Post-it notes that I cut down to size because I needed them to be small. But all of my like chapter stuff, I just made like a table on Google Docs and I laminated it and put little sticky magnets so I could just like move things around, because most of my goals are going to have to do with like whatever book I'm writing, how many chapters I'm writing, or what I'm revising and stuff like that. So that just made sense to me. I like the way that looks. So those are the goals. I'll check in again at the end of March and let you know how that quarter went. More videos to come. I'm having a good time making videos. I don't see that I will stop anytime soon. Hope everyone's doing well, their writing's going well, their goals are going well, and I'll see you in the next video.